I want to call the board meeting to order here at Goff Middle School. Welcome, everyone. Tonight's attendance, all board members are in attendance except for Mr. Yaboa. Hopefully he'll be here shortly. With that, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. So we're pleased to be another one of our school districts this evening here at Goff Middle School. And first order of business is we have our student council, Ryan and Emma from Columbia High School. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. So first and foremost, we want to thank the Columbia High School principals, security team, staff, and teachers for their rapid and safe response to the emergency situation that occurred this past Thursday. On behalf of all CHS students, we appreciate the district's readiness and all of the work that has gone into ensuring that we can have the safest possible educational experience every day. We would also like to request that going forward, students be notified with the same information that parents are receiving, especially during emergency situations. During the shelter in place, students were not given access to the same or to the most up-to-date information, despite being most directed by the events and led to like a flurry of rumors. We believe that by informing students, along with parents regarding ongoing events, we can create a more stable environment for students during these types of situations.
The Student Council has raised $1,000 for the Columbia Cakes Cancer Campaign through our ice cream sale fundraisers on Fridays and a club donation that will benefit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And finally, it's been a huge change with masks off, so we'd like to thank everyone who helped with that decision, and the atmosphere has just been great, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ryan, have you, in relation to your comments, have you talked to Mr. Harkin about this?
No, not yet.
Okay. So I think maybe a follow-up with, like, from a safety perspective, there's reasons why those things happen. So I think if you follow up with him and talk to him about, Mr. Simons, about some of the whys, may be helpful, because I understand what you're saying, though. Having a daughter who's a senior who was texting me quite frequently during that time. Some moral grandeur. So,
all right, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now moving to the next item is our minutes. All board members were present except for Mr. Mann. Any questions, revisions on the comments? Or the draft minutes, I'm sorry. Seeing none, need a motion to approve the minutes. Kathleen, any second? Jennifer, all those in favor? Those abstaining? Approved. Now we'll move to our board forum. I'll start on my left with Cheryl. Cheryl, okay, good. Michelle's good. John, anything? Good. Mark, good. Jennifer? Kathleen? And Joanne?
Condolences to the Marcasinas family. While we're here at Goff, a former teacher at Goff, Judy Marcasinas, passed away recently. She was a math teacher here for many years.
Can you mute Mr. McDonald? Sorry about that. Joanne, did I interrupt? Anything else? I'm sorry. Frank? Nothing? Good. I just want to say, you know, in relation to what Ryan indicated, the shelter in place and just the process and the support from our police department, the actions of our administration, just very well handled. So I want to thank them and the team for that, Mr. Simons. Now moving to our public forum, residents, students, employees, and business representatives of the East Greenbush Central School District may address the board on matters concerning programs and/or operations of the district, up to matters involving personnel. Members of the board do not directly respond to citizen concerns in the public forum. If a response is appropriate, either the president or superintendent will contact the individual in the near future. Those persons wishing to address the board will be recognized by the chair of the meeting and should state for the record their name and address or affiliation with the district or business. While the board does not wish to infringe upon free speech protections, it must be stressed the visitor's forum is not deemed to be an open forum. The board president will conduct the forum for orderly and efficient operation of board business. In addition, any remarks which may be considered defamatory or stigmatizing or prohibited, declared out of order. All comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Klopote. I am a resident. I reside at 101 Crossway Road in Nassau, New York. I have 2 children. One is in kindergarten and one is in third grade. They both attend DPS. I'm here tonight because I'd like to paint a picture for you for how the district responds to parents. In mid-October, we raised concerns about the teacher's sudden assigning of daily homework in our son's kindergarten class. In the course of that discussion, we asked the teacher to provide us with routine updates for how he was doing. She refused. Fast forward to early December, and we have our parent-teacher conference where she informs us that she is deeply concerned that our son cannot count. He has fallen far behind his class, so much so that he is getting extra help on the side, really without us being notified. This is shocking for two reasons. One, this was happening while she was refusing to give us routine updates, and two, he can count. My husband took video the very next day of him counting everything that they could find in the kitchen and sent it to her. He just didn't count for the teacher. Following this, we reached out to Mr. Alvey regarding our growing alarm that the teacher refuses to provide us updates, and meanwhile thinks our son cannot count, when in fact he could. After some back and forth, Mr. Alvey offered a meeting with us and the teacher. This was just right before winter break. When I did not hear back from him after winter break, I sent an email reminding him. On Tuesday, March 1st, more than 2 months since our first meeting was offered, I had enough and I reached out again. On Wednesday, Mr. Alvey apologized and said he would set up a time to meet with us and the kindergarten teacher. When I did not hear back from him on Friday morning, I called the assistant superintendent's office. I reached Mr. McHugh, who told me that he had spoken to Mr. Alvey. He said, and I am quoting Mr. McHugh directly here, that Mr. Alvey told him that he didn't believe our concerns were valid. I am a principal myself in a different district, and I can tell you that I could never imagine speaking to a parent that way. Never. My husband emailed Mr. Alvey following this conversation. He said that while he understands Mr. Alvey doesn't think our concerns are valid, we'd still like to have the meeting. Several hours later, Mr. Alvey responded that he would schedule a meeting with us, the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. That was Friday evening. We just heard back to schedule a meeting today for next week, which is nearly 3 months later. 3 months since the first meeting was offered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board this time? No? Okay. That will conclude our public forum. We'll move on to the reports and presentations of the superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buono. At this time, I'd like to introduce Assemblyman John McDonald. Traditionally, Mr. McDonald has come to our Board of Education meeting and been very accessible to the district regarding various state issues that impact our schools. He has been a strong supporter of public schools, including our school district, East Greenbush. And he's here to update the Board of Education and our community on the status of the New York State budget and any other issues that the state is currently considering in the legislature that will impact our schools. So at this point, it's a privilege of our district to have Assemblyman McDonald here, and I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. McDonald, who is attending this meeting via Google Meet. Assemblyman McDonald, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And first of all, am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes.
Perfect. Good. And to the board, thank you for the opportunity to give you an Albany update. To really give you an update right now, we are still in the final stages of negotiating our one house assembly budget, which is due this week. We are literally like going for another 2 hours, and I just took a break. I unfortunately just can't drive out there tonight to be there in person, although next year I look forward to doing that. As you know, Governor Hochul introduced a very strong budget. The state is in a very good financial position, better than we've been in the past 10 years I've been here. And therefore, and as the number of crunchers know at East Greenbush and many other districts, a strong budget has been put forward that really focuses on the foundation aid to really close those gaps that I've been hearing about for the last 10 to 20 years. And we plan to close the total gap between this year and next year, which I think is significant because it's really making sure that the state is investing properly in education. At the same token, leaving the education to the professionals and the board in the district. Now, we do respect home rule and the importance of each community being able to identify areas where they have challenges, and we're hoping that the increased foundation aid will help be able to allocate the proper resources where it needs to be. Historically, as Jeff knows this, we would be talking about some of the other proposals that were normally be traditionally proposed by the governor, particularly in regards to, cutting or consolidating a lot of different funding streams when it comes to BOCES and transportation. The good news is Governor Hochul has not done that, which is actually remarkable in many aspects. So right now, I can say comfortably that the largest issue is actually the best issue, which is funding. And what we're starting off with is the floor. It's only going to get better from here. I don't want to promise too much, but overall statewide, you're going to see a $3 billion increase in education aid throughout the state of New York. That's significant. It's going to be over $30 billion throughout the state. In East Greenbush, my recollection is I think there's a significant increase, about 8 or 9% increase, which is much better than I've ever talked about in the 10 years I've been representing East Greenbush. And, to be clear, I only represent, unless I'm wrong, I'm glad to represent the community of North Greenbush, which is one component of a larger district. Next year, hopefully, with the positive outcome of the elections, I'll actually be fully representing East Greenbush as well. So that'll be even better. The only other thing that has been really on top of the mind of education overall in regards to the budget process is to increase the state's funding to the BOCES for the CTE educators. I can tell you that the Assembly One House budget will include that funding to get to the goal of $60,000 per CTE over the next 3 years. So that's another step in the right direction. And for those who've been around a while know that there used to be a 10-point checklist of things that educators and boards and administrators all wanted to have taken care of. And after we check off the CTE, it really brings it down to just good old-fashioned money. I will say this, areas to look for increased investment from the Assembly, and hopefully we'll make it through to the end of the budget process, is going to be in the areas of mental health. We know that for a variety of different reasons, the pandemic really had a very large impact on everybody, but particularly in children. So we are dedicating significant, I think $30 to $40 million more of funding for mental health to be used in the schools as they deem fit. Every school does things differently. And that's not to say one's right or wrong. It's just the fact of making local decisions. So we want to provide that funding to give you the opportunity because we've heard it loud and clear. We actually heard it, and Jeff knows because we meet regularly with the superintendents during multiple times during the year, not just during budget time. We've heard that mental health concerns were continuing to grow prior to the pandemic. It's only been exacerbated during the pandemic. So we're hoping that the funding we're providing provides you the proper resources. The last thing I'll say, and I'll open up to questions from the board and anybody else and comments. There are some little tweaks out there in regards to looking at raising the threshold for projects that need to go to public referendum. Right now, it's any capital project over $100,000 has to go referendum. That does not really reflect modern day construction costs. So that increased proposal to $250,000 we're pushing for. Doesn't mean that we're by any stretch of the imagination sidelining the process. Everything still has to go out to get proper bids, follow the procurement rules. But like anything else, it allows us to get things done in a much more efficient manner. What people don't realize is when districts go out to referendums, there is a very large, laborious background review done by the education department, which over the years has fluctuated with the proper staff. To be doing this for for $110,000 project is not really in the best interest. At the same token, unfortunately, building a shed or a garage these days can easily be over $100,000. So with that, Jeff, and to the board, I'll curb my comments for now. And if there's any questions, I'd love to entertain them.
Thank you, Councilman McDonald. Any questions from the board members?
Just a comment.
Comment from John Dunn?
Hello, John. This is John Dunn. I would be remiss if I didn't have a comment for you,
I know.
but it's all good. Thank you very much for all you do for this district. I know you advocate for the students and families, and you always keep us in the loop and in your thoughts as you move forward. With that being said, as we prepare the budget, I'm already thinking about next year's budget. And you talked about the need for mental health and interventions in this year's budget. And maybe you can start the conversation now, because probably next year in the school year, we're going to start to see some gaps that have formed. And there's going to be other types of interventions in these deficits that are sure to follow from K through 12. So keep up the good work. You are the only representative of this district who regularly reports to us. And on behalf of the community, I really appreciate your presence here, and let's think of those kids for next year as well. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. And, as I referenced earlier, at least every other month, Jeff and the superintendents, we meet, talk, whatever it may be, correspond on a variety of different issues. And I definitely will keep my ear to the ground. Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess that.
John, I want to thank you again for all that you're doing for our schools. In particular, the foundation aid increase has been reported to our board. That's within the governor's proposal. We're also very grateful for the pre-K funding that we received last year and will again next year. We'll be talking about pre-K for next year tonight at the meeting. And we do appreciate your continued communication, your advocacy for our schools, and all that you've done over the course of the last many years to support our schools and the public schools in this area. So, John, we'll let you get back to the other business, and we thank you again for making the time to be here tonight to update us on what's happening with the state budget.
Thank you. And the last thing I'll say to all of you is, we are going to introduce our one-house budget this weekend. It'll be passed on Monday, but then it's on to negotiations with the Senate and the governor. I fully expect us to have a budget done on time.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
John.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John. Yep. Have a good night. Next item is the presentation from Goff Middle School. Mr. Simons?
Yes, last summer, our Board of Education, moving into the fall, supported the use of some of our additional state aid and federal funds to help our sixth graders transition, some of our fifth graders who needed extra support, closer student-to-staff ratios, counseling support. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Barker, our principal here, and the staff to come forward to present what we call our sixth grade Jumpstart program, which has been very successful in its initial year.
Good evening. Welcome to Goff Middle School, and thank you for being here, Board of Education members and Central Administration team. We have a really concise presentation for you this evening that really highlights the program that you all approved last year. And as Mr. Simon says, this program has been something that we've been looking to do for a number of years, and this year we were able to implement it. And one of the things that I can tell you is that every year when we have fifth graders come to middle school, we have a dozen or so students who really struggle to make that transition from the elementary model to the middle school model. As you know, they may have two teachers that they go back and forth to at the elementary model, but they come here and they have 9 transitions a day. That requires some maturity. That requires students having executive functioning skills. It requires students to potentially have more support at home because they have more homework and a lot more on the plate to manage. And so we end up having lots of time with teachers talking about these students, and the time that we're able to really figure out what makes them tick and get them the support we need. 3/4 have passed and they have failed 3/4 of school. This is on top of probably a K through 5 failure as well. So they haven't had success in school for a number of various reasons, whether it be lack of support at home, whether it be inability to figure out how to organize themselves, lack of motivation, etc. So with this program that we have in place, as Mr. Simon says, it is an elementary model within our middle school model. And I'm not going to share all the details of the program, but what I will tell you is that we're having tremendous success with it. These students are doing extremely well, and for maybe the first time in their educational career, they're experiencing success as students. I want to give credit to the team over here to my right, Sharon Dunn, who is our our guidance counselor who oversees our alternative education program. She's overseeing Jumpstart 6, as well as our middle school alternative program, grades 7 and 8. And Katie Latoile is our teacher we hired this year, and we're so happy to have her. She comes with a lot of experience, and she is our teacher of the program, and we couldn't have found a better fit. And then Mr. Newman, who oversees our alternative program. Those three work tremendously well together and do a lot of problem solving, a lot of meetings, and really have done a great job running our alternative program. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Sharon Dunn and Katie, and they're going to tell you a little bit about what's been going on, why we feel it's successful, and let them share some of the successes. So here you go, Sharon.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board and the superintendent for giving us this opportunity and supporting our students in this endeavor. It's been very rewarding, challenging, but rewarding as well. So what we've handed out are some brochures and some of the referrals that we use to take a look at for incoming students. So we will be referring to them if you'd like to take a look at those as we go along. This will be brief, I promise you. So I'll start with the description of the program. The Jumpstart program for 6th graders provides a unique learning environment for students who have been previously identified as needing support with transitioning from elementary to middle school. The goal of the program is to provide students with a positive educational experience while teaching them the skills necessary for high academic performance and personal success. This program uses differentiated instruction and creates an environment of social, emotional learning and academic support. So how did we get started? We know that you guys approved the program. Now we have to put it together, right? So what we did as a team, we met with the elementary teachers, social workers, and principals, and we had conversation. We discussed the students who they thought would benefit most from participating in our program and would help them, support them in their transition to the middle school. A referral form was developed and distributed to the elementary school principals. The purpose of the form was to assist in identifying the students, their individual needs, and previous interventions. So you could see that although there are 2 referral forms in there, one is specific to the principals of the elementary school, and the other one is specific to the teachers here at Goff. So one is used at the end of the 5th grade year so that we can get those students identified, and then the other one is used as we go through the school year. So after the first quarter, we meet with the teachers and we say, what's going on? Are there any students that you feel could benefit from this program? Let's take a look and see what we can do. The referred students, along with their parents and guardians, were contacted. We met through Zoom meetings and discussed the benefits of the programs as it related to each of the students' needs. So it was a conversation. It wasn't an interview. It was a conversation really about, how are you doing this year? Real honest. Do you have your homework completed all the time? Are you struggling in any areas? Would you be less distracted in a smaller classroom? So looking at their individual needs and trying to identify them and find the perfect number. Well, we can only have 15 students, but trying to find the perfect chemistry, balance, if you will, with the students, as well as, getting their parents to also agree that they feel that this is a proper program for them. So we successfully started the Jumpstart program in September with 8 students. Now, you may ask us, how did you get to those 8 students? We talked about conversations we had. We talked about the referral process. The principals of the elementary schools did a wonderful job identifying. We had 15 really solid students that we could take a hard look at. We contacted their parents. So 2 of the 15 students right off the get-go, 1 moved out of the district before we could even have an interview or conversation. 1 was accepted into the program and left the district before September. We had 2 students who were referred, but maybe to be more watched, more monitored. Maybe they should start the program without, or start middle school without the program. And then the remaining 3 parents thought that they would like their child to start without a program. So that's how we got to the number 8. So how's it going? I'm going to pass it to Katie.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Latoile. I am the 6th grade Jumpstart teacher here, and this is how it's going. You can see here that on the very left-hand side, you have the scores. I believe this is the end of 5th grade report cards. And then on the right-hand side, we have the end of the first quarter for 6th grade. So you can see the highlights in green are all of the subject areas where these students have increased in their grades. And you can see we do have 1 student who transferred in from Troy, I think somewhere, yeah, Troy School 14. And so we don't have data from her, but this is a great measure of our success so far. You know, in the classroom, we're working on not only academics, but, you know, social, emotional, and organizational skills. But, you know, truly, one of the biggest, you know, successes that we have seen is really just the attendance piece, because one of the biggest concerns with our kids, you know, one of the reasons that they were referred was because, you know, they had a lot of attendance issues. And we have seen this year that the attendance has just, you know, it's been great. And I think it's because they feel confident enough to come to school because they're in a smaller setting and they're getting the help that they need. So when they come to school, that's really half the battle. You know, once they're here, we can really work with them. And you can see here that this is the reason for the success that we've had so far. So, you know, Sharon and I work really closely together on the social emotional piece, and she's coming in a couple times a month. So if you want to speak, do you want to speak to, or a couple times, she's coming in every day, but she's coming in at least 2 times a month to do formal lessons. But she does come in every day. She checks in with us. The kids know her really well. But if you want to speak to kind of some of the stuff you're doing in the classroom.
So I think in the very beginning, Katie and I got together and we're like, how are we going to approach these kids? How are we going to get them to trust us? Because we really need them to trust us so that they will tell us what they need. They feel comfortable coming to school. So we said our big goal was just developing that positive rapport with the students and how we were going to go about doing that. So some of the topics that we present are based on team building, effective communication, impulsivity, positive characteristics of good friends, rumors and gossip, ways to manage stress and anxiety, gratitude, mindfulness, hygiene, anger management, perseverance, and goal setting. So you could probably guess that a lot of those topics come to life, and we decide to present on those because that's what we're seeing in the classroom. Some of those areas that are, you know, maybe problematic or we have issues. You can well imagine we have these students in a classroom for 6 periods, not consecutively periods, but they are with Katie for 6 periods. And there's a small number of students, so they become almost like a family. So we all know what happens with family, right? And siblings. When times are great, it's great. When times aren't so great, we have little hiccups and issues that we need to deal with. And the way that we deal with that is through these presentations. And we have a great community group discussion, and we get to listen to what all the kids have to say. And we try to problem solve with them. And it's been working very well. So in addition, I do check in with the students every single morning. I eat lunch with them as often as possible. And the students love it. I thought there might be like, oh, Mrs. Dunn, you know, I don't really want to eat lunch with you. So I had to have them one-on-one in the beginning of the year because of the COVID protocols. But now we can have our masks off if we choose to. We can have friends come in. we play games, and it's just been a great way to really develop a great rapport with the kids. I feel like they really trust us. They come to us with all kinds of information sometimes that we don't really want to hear. They tell us a lot about what's going on with other students in the building. So they really, I believe they really trust us. So that's been awesome. This is just for fun. That's a picture of our kids at Halloween. So they just really enjoy being with each other. And we have parties and roast cookies, and do all the fun things with the kids. But you may ask, how is this different from MAP? You know that we've had MAP 7 and MAP 8, and it's doing very well. This program is different from MAP because it's designed to provide that early intervention, 6th grade. We want to catch those students right coming from the elementary level so that they don't come to school and don't feel successful. We want them to come to school, feel comfortable, kind of learn the ropes, build their skills, and be ready to transition out to the 7th grade. We are finding that some of our Jumpstart students have already developed the skills and confidence to transition out of the program for individual courses. We have 2 students currently who are transitioning out to, one is out for English and one is out for social studies. What I mean by that is they are in traditional 6 classroom settings for those subject areas. So when we started seeing the success with the students, we thought, you know what, we really need to develop some type of criteria so that we can kind of set the bar so we know when the students are ready to move on and transition out. So some of the things that we talked about were students maintaining at least an average of 87 for quarter 1 and quarter 2. No one transitions out before the first semester. So we have that in place. They also need to be appropriate. They need to have good attendance. They need to be organized. They need to pretty much just be ready to leave kind of our protected environment and move on. Then we have conversations with parents and students, making sure that they are comfortable. And we have teacher recommendation, and the administrator also makes that recommendation. So what we have learned, we need to start the conversations and student referral process about our program with the elementary school earlier in the current school year. Because we started so late, we waited last year, we had to get the board approval for the program, we really started later. So the principals of the elementary school can look forward to an invitation the first week of April so that we can get this going. Students and parents, guardians are most likely to consider joining the program for the beginning of the school year and after the first quarter. If you think about it, once the kids are here and after the second quarter, they kind of they feel like they've transitioned in already. They've made friends, they're comfortable with their schedules. And even though they may not be stellar students, their parents don't want to kind of make them have another adjustment. So we feel that if we could get more kids in at the beginning of the school year, the better. So plans for next year, we'd like to start the school year off with more students in the program. We would like to add community service opportunities and field trips. And we'd like to have the continued support of a full-time school counselor, that's me, and teaching assistant for the program, as it's been very beneficial in supporting the students both academically, socially, and emotionally. So this is what our kids think. We're very proud of them for being willing to do this.
Hi, my name is Chloe Rudolph, and I am from Janae. I really like the Jumpstart program. The program has helped me in many different ways, like that I feel comfortable with all the kids in my class, so I don't get embarrassed when I get a question wrong or right. I also have been doing very well in school this year. Last year, I was struggling because I wasn't getting enough help. This year, I am not afraid to ask for help. I also have anxiety, so Jumpstart was a perfect start to middle school. That is why I'm very grateful to be in this program.
Hi, my name is Kaya Snyder. I went to school for 5th grade in Rensselaer Park. This year I'm in the Jumpstart program for 6th grade, and I'm doing better focusing and participating, and I'm doing better with turning in assignments because in 5th grade I wasn't doing very well turning in assignments or going to school on time because I was fully remote and I didn't really care about school at that time. But in the Jumpstart program, it helped me a lot. That's all I have to say. Thank you and goodbye.
Hi, I'm Samantha Steger, and I came from Belltop Elementary School. And some of the things I love about the program is being in a classroom with a small amount of people and not being as embarrassed to answer a question whether it's wrong or right. Last year, I struggled so much with anxiety and stress, and I never wanted to go to school and be myself. But now since I joined the program, I'm more comfortable in being myself.
So, isn't that great? That's what we're looking for, right? They're comfortable, they're happy, they're coming to school, they want to be here. So at this time, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions, board members? Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much. I don't know, is it working? Yeah. So what's the magic number that you think would be the best number? 15 is a little low. You know, when you went back last year, how many could you have put in there that really would have qualified?
Well, we put everybody in that we could.
But you stopped at 15, right? What if?
That's the maximum number of students that we will have in the program at any given time. It's
Okay.
15. We would like to be able to start the program off with, I would say, 13, maybe leave 2 spots for if we have students that transfer in or, you know, we have those needs.
Do you think you're going to have any transfer out this quarter completely, or do you think it'll be a full year?
We think it's going to be a full year, but we do have 2 to 4 additional students that we're looking to transition out for 1 subject each. And the 2 students who are currently transitioned out are going to pick up another class.
That's amazing. Great success, really.
Thank
is.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Quick question for me. What's the feedback from the parents of the students who are attending? What are you hearing?
It's
Katie?
been very positive.
Good.
You
Good.
know, when we reach out, it's been just really positive. As a matter of fact, when I asked the parents for permission to videotape the
yeah.
students, they were just so pleased. They couldn't believe that their students would even do this.
Nice.
So it was awesome.
And I have a lot of really close communication with all of our parents, and I'm constantly, you know, they have rarely heard positive feedback from teachers in the past. So, you know, I'm always emailing home, you know, like almost every one of our students has been student of the month already, you know, 90% of them are on honor roll or high honor roll. And so those parents love to hear that. You know, I'm always making sure I reach out with that positive stuff. So I think it's been really great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anyone else?
I just want to say how impressed I am of how you organized and got this program off the ground since last summer. And one of the things, when Mrs. Barker first brought this request to me, I said was that I would work with the board to support it, but I didn't want to see it become a permanent placement for students. I wanted it to be a transitional program and a bridge for the kids to be successful. And you've done exactly that with criteria and measures and supports. And I like the fact that you're, as kids are ready, integrating them into the regular environment where they can be successful. So I appreciate all that you've done to achieve this program this year. And I'm certainly glad that the board agreed to support it.
Thank you very much.
And continue to support it.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? Back to Jill.
Thank you, everyone.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we still have some kids coming our way. The teachers are looking to continue to have conversations with us about maybe entering some more kids in the program when we continue to talk about kids and evaluate their readiness or their need for this program. So again, thank you for supporting it. Staffing that we have for it is really necessary for success. So once again, I want to thank all of my team for doing a great job and thanking all of you for approving this. We also have another presentation, a quick presentation on the updates in our technology classrooms. It was part of our construction project, and there's been some major changes that you really think you'll be happy to see. It's right across the hall after John Sorrenzioni, one of our technology teachers, comes up and shares with you a very quick presentation on what it was and what it is now and what are the benefits and how this construction project has really changed our world and for technology for our students. So John, if you could come on up, I would appreciate it.
Which one do I aim at? Or do I aim at you? There we go. All right. So good evening, everybody. Our program went through a lot of major changes over the past few years. So we really brought what we were doing here at Goff up to modern standards, right? So even though we had a really good curriculum here, we didn't have a room to match our really good curriculum. So through the Capitol Building Project, which was approved by you guys several years ago, finally came to fruition for us. So it was our time around, our part of the phase to get our rooms done. So it was kind of pushed back a year, but pandemic-y and everything. And now we're here with a new room. So I just wanted to go over a little bit about the room and what we do. So yeah, this is some of the stuff we do inside there. So just in case you don't remember what we do in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, 6th grade is computer literacy, robotics, and coding. In 7th grade, we do manufacturing, communications, and 3D printing technology. 8th grade, transportation technology, design and problem solving, and engineering basics. So this is what the old rooms look like, and the old rooms were pretty old. So the floor was original to the building, and it's wood, and it's been painted over several times and tape on it several times. And we had when I first started here 21 years ago, it was somewhat of a new room because the rooms were, I think they went and made some changes to the room. It was like 4 or 5 years before I started. And the change that they made was a few cabinets, and they put a wall up. So instead of 2 classrooms, they made it into 4 classrooms. So I don't know what the theory was with that, but those walls had to come out. That is just a few more pictures of what the room kind of looked like. So out with the old, and this is the pre-demo. We had to take everything out of the classrooms. Me and the other technology teacher in the maintenance department wound up taking all of our stuff out and putting it into 2 40-foot storage units. One of them still back there. We're going to eventually get rid of that. But one of them we have completely emptied out. So in with the new, everything comes out. The floor came out. We wound up doing a concrete floor, kind of give it a new modern look. The wall in the center section came out. That gives us a lot more room for instruction. And we're also able to see the students across the classroom without having a wall in between. So then in with the new, there's a little bit of the cabinetry going in. So the cabinetry in my classroom has all the electrical outlets in there because we have the robotics that they have to plug in and charge up each day. And everyone has a Chromebook they need to use. They don't have them all charged all the time, so we need to make sure they can still use those. This is Mr. Hurd's classroom. There's a few things going back inside there. So it's been updated with new cabinetry. Wall came out inside that classroom as well. The electrical wound up getting done. The 2 40-foot storage containers now getting emptied. who better to do it than a bunch of guys over 50 years old? The one other person that wasn't was Jimmy Truss, our youthful building maintenance supervisor. He was able to help us too. But those two units were completely stuffed with stuff. And not all the stuff that we put inside the unit actually went back in the classroom. So just like when you guys move to a new house, you have all the stuff and you're like, I don't want this in my new house. So we had to get rid of a bunch of things. So that's our last unit. So we have a few more things still inside of it that we're still trying to go through and hash out whether we really need it or, you know, rainy day, I don't know. So a little bit of a glimpse of the classroom. I know it's really small, but it's really small because you guys are going to get up and walk across the hallway and actually see it. So instead of seeing it really small like this, you can actually see what it actually looks like. Yeah, we're all done with that virtual stuff, so you can see it in person. Are there any questions? I try to be nice and quick and sweet for you. Any questions?
The rooms are right here, so after you ask your questions, if you want to just take a quick look over there. Great.
So just kids who were in the program before and came back and saw the new classroom, what kind of
Oh, they were
reactions?
surprised. Because a lot of them didn't know we were doing it.
Oh, okay.
So it was a shock to them. So they came back and were like, where'd this come from? It's like, did you do this, Mr. C? I'm like, no. No, I do a lot, but not that much and not that quick either.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I remember those wooden floors when I was here.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
And how has it helped your instruction in terms of having this space?
Well, it's been helping out a lot, especially just safety alone, not having that wall there.
Sure.
I still don't know the whole theory of why they wanted that wall, but having the wall out made such a difference in the classroom, being able to just see over the entire class. So it's worked out.
Nice. Nice.
Any questions?
So you want to take a brief
5-minute
and
break.
go check it out? Okay, we'll take 10 minutes and we'll go check it out. Okay.
I'm all I'm okay on this shoulder. I need to just start bringing like a big bag, because I never know each school is different.
Yeah.
Oh, we got everybody back? Mr. Dunn, in order, okay. Want to thank Ms. Barker and the staff for the presentations, excellent. Great to see the work that was done in those days too, right, Mr. Simon? Come to fruition, and then I'm sure the kids will love using that room, that space.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, school enrollment projections.
Yes, annually, the board receives a enrollment projection report. We are making that document public for anyone in the community that would like to see trends related to both our historical enrollment, kindergarten through 12th grade, but also projections that are done by the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. Our enrollment is projected to remain stable at each level, elementary, middle school, and high school, over the next 5 years. It's an important tool that we use to plan our budget, to plan the number of staff that we need. And the report was provided and presented to the building Budget Review and Advisory Committee, the BRAC Committee, last week. And it looks like we are at this point very stable with some modest changes year to year, but we are in pretty good shape with our enrollment moving forward.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Simons on the enrollment projections? Always an excellent report, a lot of good data to dig into and to help us plan the future.
Thank you.
Last item is the Department of Health guidance.
Yes, I'm going to provide just a brief overview of this. We will be sending a letter to the parents. As everyone is aware, New York State approved school districts no longer having to require masks within our schools, effective on Wednesday, March 2nd, just about a week ago. The guidance regarding the changes in the mask requirements were issued to school districts on Tuesday evening, March 1st, the evening before the new changes were to come into place. Our administrative team, the districts within our Questar BOCES, and our nurses have been reviewing the guidance. And I just want to provide a brief summary, which will be reflected in a letter that will go out to the parents tomorrow. We're pleased with the guidance because there are things that are required, but there are a number of things that are recommended and not required. In regard to students or staff members who become COVID positive, there is a requirement that when they return to work or they return to class, that they wear a mask for day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, and day 10. That's for positive cases only. Additionally, there will be no quarantines of exposed individuals. However, there is a recommendation, not a requirement, that individuals who are identified as being in contact with somebody who is COVID positive wear a mask after the exposure for 10 days. So our letter will inform parents that that's a recommendation. Our nurses will inform parents that that's a recommendation, but the students nor the employees are required to do that if they are identified as a contact. It is also still in place that any employees who are currently unvaccinated need to be tested once a week. That is a requirement. In addition, we are still doing the COVID report to New York State, and we are doing contact tracing, because in order to identify those families that we need to advise of the recommendations, we still have to do the individual contact tracing. It is also recommended that if someone is exposed to COVID-19, that they test at least twice within 5 days. The at-home tests can be utilized for that purpose. We have an at-home test protocol that the board supported at a prior meeting that fits with the new guidance. And we have plenty of at-home tests available. I think we have 17,000 right now in the district, and we are able to distribute those, and we are inventorying those that are no longer valid, but we have plenty of tests. So the guidance provides a lot more flexibility, but there are some circumstances for those individuals that are COVID positive where the masks are going to be expected, but only recommended in cases of children or employees who are exposed.
Any questions on the guidance? Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Simons.
Welcome.
Moving to the next topics are 3 discussion items. The first one is regarding the 22-23 school budget and the preliminary tax cap calculation.
I'm going to ask Mrs. Wager to explain the tax cap for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. So every year we calculate the tax cap, and that basically comes up with a percentage that we're allowed to increase the tax levy amount by without requiring a supermajority vote. So what we do is we start with the prior year tax levy, which is our current year tax levy, which was $58,374,546. We apply a tax base growth factor to that. That base growth factor comes to us from New York State Department of Taxation and Finance. And that really accounts for the full value growth of property within the district. And I will let you know that the 1.0429 is the highest in Rensselaer County. So that's very good for our district in that the property growth. And then we take into consideration the pilots that we receive in this current year. Pilots are payments in lieu of taxes. These are agreements that are reached with different businesses within the district and the Rensselaer County IDA. We also consider the capital levy, and that amount is the amount of expenses over the revenue for capital projects. And then we have an allowable levy growth factor. The allowable levy growth factor is the lesser of either 2% or the consumer price index. And as we know, inflation has risen, and they calculated it over a period of months, and that was at 4.7%. So this year we'll use the 2%. So that subtotal comes to $64,379,332. From that, we have to take out the pilot amounts that we are expecting next year, because those won't be part of the tax rolls. And then we also add in the capital levy, which I explained to you was the difference between the expenses and the revenue on the capital projects. So for next year, our tax levy limit comes to $61,261,708, and that represents a 4.94% increase over this current year. That's not to say that that's what the tax levy will increase. It is just it is a percentage by which we can increase the tax levy without having a supermajority. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Very good. No questions. Like Linda, just to reiterate, this is the maximum allowable amount, but not something the board is saying is going to happen. We have budget hearings, budget information, things like that to consider as we move into the 22-23 budget cycle. So that's it. Okay. Next item is a summary of the federal grants. We'll need that.
Yeah, we promised the board and the community that we would continuously update the board and the community regarding the status of our federal grants, looking at how we are tracking the expenditures within each of the 3 major federal grants that we received over the course of the last year, as well as program evaluation of how some of those programs are doing. We've been highlighting some of those programs at previous board meetings. So we're going to start with an explanation from Linda Wager, our Director of Business and Finance, as to where we stand regarding expenditures with each of those grants. And then we're going to defer to Mr. McHugh to talk about some real success stories that we're seeing with our youngest children making progress in reading, early literacy, and math. So Linda, if you want to just kind of give the board an overview of the accounting of each of the grants, where the expenses are falling right now, and then we'll turn it to Mr. McHugh.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Simons. So as you will recall, we had 2 funding sources of federal grants for this period of time. The CRRSA is the Corona Response and Relief Act, and that was broken into 2 separate parts, GEAR 2 and ESSER 2. So those total amounts that we were allocated was about $3.9 million. You'll see that in the original budget column for GEAR 2 and ESSER 2 combined, they are $3.9 million. we budgeted to use the majority of that money in this current year. When I produced the budgets, I used, when we were talking about staffing needs, I used step 3 on whatever schedule, whether it be SRP or EGTA schedule, I use step 3. And then I also am conservative when I'm budgeting for the benefits, because I have to assume that people are going to take the most expensive, which is the family insurance plan. So on those two budgets, you can see that we have available to reallocate $125,000 of Gear 2 money and $436,000 of ESSER 2 money. What I would suggest is that we had the RTI coordinator that this year was budgeted for under the ESSER 2, and we'll have enough money in the budget to cover that RTI coordinator under this same grant next year. And then we'll have some money left over and we can reallocate that. We talked about, as we go through the budget season, we talked about the AIS teachers that we hired and how those will be accounted for. So we'll work through that project. The reason that there's such a difference is, as I said, it's mostly in benefits. And I always assume the most expensive benefits for employees. And quite a few of our new employees this year did not take family insurance, but rather took the individual insurance. So there was a big savings there this year. The other part of that is that some of these salaries are not for a full year because some of these people did not come on right in the beginning of the year. So there is some money there, and I'd be happy to give you more specifics if you'd like that, but that's just an overall. Now, on the second page is the American Rescue Plan, the ARP money. That totaled $3,084,534. The reason you're seeing a budget here of $2,384,534 is because $700,000 of that was for a state allocation, and that required a separate budget, 3 budgets actually, and a separate submittal. That was just approved for us 2 weeks ago, and we have not received any of that money yet, but it's $700,000, and that is specifically for learning loss, summer enrichment, and after-school programs. So this $2.3 million is the remainder. Now this we spread out. This grant is good through September 30th of 2024. So for this year, we budgeted to use almost $1.4 million of that. Again, I was conservative in the budget, and we're using about 1.2 million, so we'll have about 200,000 there that we'll also be able to reallocate moving forward. One of the reports that are attached there, you'll see that the positions, the number of positions that are funded under these grants, and some of them are currently being funded out of the general fund because of the way that it was budgeted under federal funds at the step 3. Some of these staff members were hired at greater than step 3, some at lower than steps 3. So we do have money enough to cover the approximate $70,000 in general fund salaries that are being charged there now. We have enough in the federal funds to cover that as well. This is all information that we will be considering as we move forward on the budget. Are there any questions?
Thank you for the level of detail. Very good. It's
Thank
good
you.
to see the carryover because I think there's still a lot of needs that we can utilize that money
Yes.
for. Yep. Okay. Jim?
Just an example of how those federal monies are being utilized. Attached in the board docs, you'll see an update regarding Renaissance Star, academic intervention services, and early intervention. So at this point, our students in kindergarten through grade 5 took the beginning of the year assessment, and they just completed the mid-year assessment. And what we have seen, really, they take the early literacy. For the most part, those students are kindergarten through grade 2 students. There is a magic score of 852. If a student scores an 852 on the early literacy, they then are given the reading assessment. but for the most part, our students in grades 2 through 5 take the reading assessment. And what we saw was that we saw a 29% growth from the beginning of the year to the mid-year for our students that took the early literacy. And we saw a 10% growth on our students that took the reading assessment, and district-wide, we saw a 14% increase in math. We have, on average, about 75% of our students kindergarten through grade 5 hitting or exceeding their anticipated targeted growth score from mid-year or from the beginning of the year to the mid-year. So there are some charts that you can take a look at. I also want to talk about the professional development and training. If you look on the document there, it was really well planned. That professional development started last June, occurred during the summer, and has occurred throughout the school year. So that is one of the things that we covered through federal monies, and it's really one of the primary reasons why we are seeing so much success. We have opened up Renaissance Star into our middle school. All our 6th and 7th graders have now taken that universal screener. And really, a few years ago, we started to look at a primary instructional resource for ELA in our elementary schools. We really slowed that down a little bit, thought that we really needed to focus in on some targeted professional development and build up our resources to support Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 intervention. We've had over 100 of our teachers participate in a professional book study this year on the science of reading, and that includes all of our building principals. They also participated in that book study. We have started to secure instructional resources to help teachers provide targeted instruction, and I list some of those purchases as well. Our teachers are re-engaging in their curriculum mapping. That's been on hold for a little while. And, you know, I put it on some examples of our RTI coordinator, who has been integral in the success of our universal screening process. So things are going really well. We have that academic data for early literacy, reading, and mathematics, and we're providing targeted instruction utilizing our early intervention specialists and our academic intervention service teachers. So seeing some really good success.
Any questions for Jim? John?
Jim, I appreciate the way you put together the presentations throughout the school year, not only today, about the data and what does the data show us. I think it'll be interesting as we formulate the next year's budget, what the data will show us in some targeted areas for maybe some of the smaller groups that are falling. You know, we're always talking about the kids who underperform or fall into the gaps. So I'm appreciative of you really putting together all this stuff so we can formulate some interventions based on the data that you're reading. Thank you.
So we have a lot of our elementary principals here today. So I see a lot of heads pop up. Any anecdotal things you want to mention about the data that was mentioned today in terms of this and the support you're receiving is from the AIS teachers? Just any quick comments you'd like to make, because I think it's really shown, and I appreciate the way that each of the elementary schools, the staff, and of course your leadership has helped to demonstrate the improvement we've seen in our students. So really very pleased to see that and have the data available to address that. So anyone want to make any comments on the elementary principals? Thank you. Dan?
First off, thank you to the board for all of your support, as well as Mr. Simons and Mr. McHugh. I've been here 30 years now, and this is really just the most support I have seen in our ELA program since I walked in the door in 1993. And it's been absolutely amazing. The K-3 interventionists, what a smart move that was. We're seeing the results. You see it in front of you. Lisa Mahar, giant shout out to her. She is the perfect fit for this role. She's very supportive, obviously, of our students and our teachers, but she's a great support to us as well. So it's really exciting to see this happening and to really see the fruits of our collective labor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Anyone else? Mr. Brigida?
I just wanted to also piggyback on what Dan said. One of the things coming from Goff Middle School as the assistant principal and going down to Janae, at Goff, we had math lab. We had a math intervention component for our middle school kids that was not at the elementary school. So what I'm really grateful for is with the planning and the foresight that the board, superintendent, Linda, Jim, everybody did, is it actually allowed us to provide math remediation at the elementary level, which is a huge asset because, as Mr. McHugh said, 14% gains from the beginning of the year to now, which hopefully will free up spots when they leave us, in fifth grade, that we can close those gaps, address those deficits that students are seeing, and then hopefully allow for the math lab at the middle school to have smaller class sizes for kids who need different type of remediation and allow the program to continue to grow. So I just want to piggyback on that because that was also a very huge success that we're seeing this year as well.
And I think that the ongoing support, our incoming kindergartners and the progression for those students, those interventions, is going to be just as critical for the next at least 2 years and maybe beyond that because of the impact that's happened from the pandemic and the learning gaps we've seen.
Yeah, and we talked about and we were worried about the gaps that we were going to see as the students moved in this year after a year, a year off, A-Day, B-Day hybrid, coming back, focusing on kindergarten. And, to have them back this year full-time, even socially distanced at the beginning of the year, and as things are starting to, to change, those supports, not just the interventionists, not just the AIS teachers, but also the classroom teachers are taking it very seriously to address those gaps.
Yep.
Everyone feels the pressure to try to close it this year. And, the data shows and it speaks for itself. Everyone's on board to really address the needs of the kids, and we'll continue to do so.
Excellent. And then things to keep in mind, board members, as we go into the budget discussions about the needs of our students. So thank you, everyone. The next discussion item is the pre-K program. You want to set the stage for that, Mr. Smith?
Yes, our board received a very well-delivered presentation from Mrs. Scalacci and the Questar BOCES team at a previous board meeting regarding the success of the pre-K program. It's very popular in the community as well now, and we're getting a lot of inquiries from parents about what might we expect for next year. Parents want to enroll their children in the lottery. And so we've been having some conversations within our little pre-K ad hoc committee that we formed last year. As you can see from the federal grant report, we do have the ability to use some carryover monies, however we choose to do it as a board. And one of the areas that we think would be beneficial would be to take a look at expanding the number of pre-K classes that we have. We currently have the 2 at Red Mill. We would like to have 3 full classes in the district. We're still working to identify where the space might be because Red Mill is receiving a lot of registrations in kindergarten. So we may only be able to house 1 pre-K class at Red Mill, not the 2 this year. So we're talking with the elementary principals about analyzing their space, but conceptually, we wanted the board to weigh in. Do you feel that we should try to expand pre-K for next year? The other thing we're looking at, in addition to the 3 classes, is we do have the ability to go to a community-based provider to provide a limited number of slots that would be based where the provider is currently providing for some of our preschool special education kids. So we would have an integrated class, which would be very beneficial. So what we wanted to do is kind of get some general direction from the board. We are going to hope to have the budget meeting next Wednesday and maybe fine tune what we would be proposing. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind when you make this decision is the UPK grant only allows you to fund $5,400 per student. And we're currently offsetting the current contract with Questar with the federal grant monies. There was an interesting and a very accurate article in the Albany Times Union based on the Albany City School Districts earlier this week that $5,400 per student nowhere near covers the full cost per student of the program. So we have resources available to do that right now. And the nice thing about pre-K is those kids move on to kindergarten. So if you had to reduce or you had to make a change in future years, you're not really impacting any individual kids or families who are in the program. You just have to make some shifts and adjustments. So Linda, if you want to add a little bit on the financing of it, and I would like what the board's views are.
Sure, thank you. As Mr. Simon said, the UPK funding that we receive is allocated at $5,400 per student. So we are looking at expanding this program to possibly 61 students versus the 36 that we have this year. So there is a cost that comes along with that, because while we receive $5,400 in aid, the approximate price per student tuition is about $10,000. It'll be slightly over that this year. So there is an expense to that we need to consider. That being said, I did include $200,000 into next year's budget of federal funds for the pre-K program, and we expect to have about $40,000 left from this year because I put in some expense for equipment and that sort of thing, supplies. So we have some money budgeted for next year. We will need to, there probably will be a cost to the general fund that we can continue to talk about as we work through the budget.
I'd like to see what that cost is to the district. So you said general fund money. Yeah, so I'd like to know what that cost is. Is that general fund money to expand or continue what we currently have?
No, right now, for next year, I have money through the UPK funding and the federal grant money to completely cover that program. What we're talking about is for this year, just to give you an idea, our total expenses for the 36 students we have to start this program is $314,817. I have funding of UPK money of $194,400 and the ARP grant of $162,000. So that's $356,400 in funding, which leaves me about $41,500 that I can use towards next year. Now, next year, we're thinking 61 students. So assuming the same price, it's going to be about $540,000 in expenses. And the funding would be about $529,000. So we would need part of the $40,000 left over from this year to cover next year as well. But between the UPK funding and the grant funds, the federal funds, we should be able to expand the program and cover that. Moving forward, we're going to have to, there might be some startup costs that I haven't included here that we would need to consider as well. But basically, I'm judging that on about $10,000 per student. And yeah, and actually, with the outside organization that we're talking about, I don't have prices on that yet, so I'm not quite sure what we'll be doing there, but they'll be able to, if that's the direction we decide to go, they'll be able to accept 7 to 8 of our students, UPK students.
So we wouldn't need any general fund money for next year.
Not
Continue and increase.
right.
Everything would be covered with federal funds.
That
And the
federal
UPK
and
grant.
state.
Federal and state
Yes.
funds.
State aid, yeah.
No tax money.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Because, I mean, I sit on the committee, very detailed, discussion about that. And I think that if the availability of the funds is there and this program has the success that we've seen, we should try to meet the community's needs under the pre-K and then look at, obviously the following year, maybe a different story, but the aid that we've received this year has been substantial. The success of the program in terms of the students and what it brings, I think if we can manage that around the district, the 3 different classrooms, hopefully find the space in those areas that are need, I think we can support next year.
Just a comment. I mean, you build a house from the foundation up, so this is a sound logic. The only thing I would be concerned about as we move this forward is if the money dries up. And I think that my only request would be to make sure that when we talk about this program on our websites and our public information, that this is a temporary program with no guarantee of year to year.
Exactly.
Because again, if the money dries up and we decide to cancel it, are we going to have 400 parents who assume that they're getting this? So I think as long as we move forward with transparency, that this is a trial based on government extra funds, not taxpayer based, in our regular budget, I think it is a very sound program.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Dunn. As a matter of fact, as soon as we started the pre-K program for this current year, we were receiving email inquiries about our program for next year. So, and we do say every year that it is for the school year, whatever school year we're in. Our plan is to start to put some information on our website during the month of March, and then have a lottery selection in the month of April so that parents can make their plans.
Good, thank you.
So I see general support from the board to move forward because there is some timing issues that, the committee discussed in terms of that. Michelle, did you have something you want to say?
I completely support exactly what John said. I
Sure.
think this is the ideal way to go. I do worry about future funding.
Sure, of
and
course.
We'll have to see how the timing works on that because, if we're already trying to apply for next year in March or April, but we don't have the budget approved yet, that might be tricky for us. So I guess we'll have to figure that out, right? Because you're saying that in March, they're going to start applying for next year already, which would be ahead of a normal year that we actually even approve a budget.
Absolutely, but then these federal funds that we currently have, we should be reviewing these quarterly to see where we're at, what our actual expenses are coming in, how we can reallocate, and the decision on where we want to reallocate to.
Yeah, that's perfect. I support it completely.
Thank you, everyone. Good, okay. All right. That concludes our discussion items, regular business, approval of programs for resident children with disabilities. Any questions or comments there? I need a motion to approve that. John, second, Joanne, all those in favor? Approved. Next items are the committee reports. We'll start with Marissa.
Thank you. Our calendar committee is almost completed with the draft. We're going to have our last meeting on Tuesday, March 15th for a brief 30 minutes. The only thing right now left for discussion is whether to put all 3 superintendent conference days at the beginning of the year prior to students returning, so we can have that embedded professional development earlier than the school year starts, or determining whether the last superintendent's conference day goes at the end of June. So we will be putting forward a draft calendar at the next March meeting.
Very good. Thanks, Marissa. Linda, anything?
None at this time.
Thank you. Jim?
The the Committee for Curriculum Studies minutes are attached. Wednesday's meeting really discussed some new texts for AP Language and Composition and some new books for AP Literature and Composition. We also reviewed the professional development sessions that are scheduled for March 25th, half day. The minutes for our Professional Development Committee are also attached. That meeting took place on February 28th. I just want to highlight that what's really relevant in there is that we did discuss the priority areas for 2022-23, and those priority items for professional development included a continued focus on the RTI process, teaching and supporting English new learners, school safety. We already have the CRAZE training set up for our opening day of school, your opening day of school next year, and social emotional learning. And we want to have a continued focus in the science of reading. So we've made some good progress in that area, and faculty wants to continue. And that professional development plan will come to the board in June for board approval, and then it gets uploaded to the state each year. Any questions?
Thank you. Anyone? No? Thanks, Jim. Jeff?
Yes, I mentioned earlier when I shared information regarding the enrollment projection report that we had a budget review and advisory committee meeting on Monday, February 28th. In addition to reviewing presentation from the Capital District Region Planning Commission, we heard a report from Adam Yagowski and Town Supervisor, East Greenbush Town Supervisor Jack Conway, regarding the progress of residential and commercial business development within the town. This is a practice that the board has had for quite some time, engaging with the towns to receive information regarding housing development, and commercial development that could potentially impact the district in terms of either more enrollment or contribute to our tax base. So the minutes are attached on the agenda. If the board has any questions about town development, that information is available. It was a very good meeting and a very good exchange, and our meetings have been very well attended this year. A regular group of people that seem to participate.
Do they still have the completion of that apartment complex on Columbia Turnpike?
That
Couple years.
that is considered to be I think it's approximately 75
Yeah, so
unit
78, yeah.
apartment complex, generally designed to be higher end apartments. The market for those apartments seems to be tied to Regeneron employees who will be looking for that type of arrangement. There is some mixed use plan for that as well, with some potential retail or services in that complex as well.
Next couple of years?
Now, did you remember the target date for completion on that?
It's a phased out.
It's a
project.
big one, yeah, it's a big-
Over several
years.
So what you're seeing now is like the beginning of the first phase, and,
Yep.
but they want to go all the way
All the way in the
back.
back, right? Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah.
Okay, so
No, it's good to see some development. Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Moving on the agenda, table motions. I don't have any. Whole business, board members, anything? No? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, items A through K. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? No? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve that. Cheryl, second. Mark, all those in favor? Approved. We don't have any addendums as far as I know, Mr. Simons, right? New business, board members, anything? No? Okay. Going to our second public forum. Anyone like to address the board at this time? No? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to the board forum number 2. I'll start on my right with Frank. Anything? Good. Joanne? Kathleen?
The
Jennifer?
only thing I would add is it was really nice this weekend. Columbia players
Yes.
did their musical, and so it was so nice to see the kids back on stage and unmasked, so you could hear them, and it was much more pleasurable for them to be singing without their masks. So it was a great effort by faculty and staff involved, students, stage crew. It's a really great show. They did Little Women.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you. Mark?
All set, thank you.
John? Good. Michelle? Good. Cheryl? Good. Just a couple of things for me. Thanks for mentioning the play. It was great. I got a chance to go there. I saw the Odyssey of Mind this weekend. We had some teams that did very well, so it was great. I think Red Mill, right, Helen, did a nice job, and they did awesome. See the pictures on the website. Just the athletics and the accomplishments there, and also, we had a Teacher of the Week with Val Gordon. That was nice recognition, and I know seeing Mr. Simon, Mr. McHugh's notes, we have 3 teachers who are currently up for Teacher of the Year. Tara Thompson, Sean Kroll, and Danny Wagner. Congratulations on those nominations. So a lot of great things happening. And I think, having been back now for this period of time without the masks on and the things that are happening, it's great to seem like it's pretty normal for now. So thanks everyone for all the work that they do and the things that are happening in our district. With that, we do have need for an executive session for purposes of employment and contractual issues. We don't anticipate any business after the board meeting at this time, so have a great night. I need a motion to move into executive session. John, in a second. Michelle, all those in favor? Approved. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.